This is Yuji from Pasta. Today, I want to talk about 20 key points for upper body training. I specifically want to focus on the upper body, and I believe it's really a waste if you're not doing this correctly. There are some minor details in training that should not be overlooked, so I would like to pick out those finer points and introduce 20 of them. If you don't pay attention to these, you might end up losing the effective load, meaning that the weights you're holding won't effectively target the muscles. As we consider this, the weight can become quite ineffective if the repetitions are not done properly. To avoid this, please check if you are doing these 20 points. I would like to introduce them one by one. First, we have the pectoralis major dumbbell bench press. And the first point is that it focuses solely on the upper part. Just the upper part. Just the upper part. Of course, just focusing on the upper body is honestly too easy, and it's not about that. It's about lowering the weight deeply to effectively engage the pectoralis major. You should aim to stretch the muscles as deeply as possible, ensuring that you don't just work the upper half. Please make sure to extend fully. Next, we will proceed while sitting. And when doing this, you should follow this approach. There are many instances where the forearms are collapsing inward. When I say this, it means that the forearms are often falling inward. If the forearms are collapsing inward, and if this is vertical, it would directly engage the pectoralis major. However, when they collapse inward, the load shifts to the triceps, meaning that out of the 10 kilograms being held, about 2 to 3 kilograms are significantly affecting the triceps. So only about 7 kilograms or even less is actually being applied to the target muscles. This results in a considerable waste of the weight being held. To avoid falling forward, it's best to maintain a vertical position while performing the exercise. Additionally, one thing to avoid is allowing the forearm to remain vertical while the dumbbell is at an angle. If the dumbbell is angled, the load shifts to the wrist, which results in a very different feeling of load on the pectoralis major compared to when the dumbbell is properly positioned. Therefore, just this small difference can change whether or not the pectoralis major is effectively targeted. It's better to keep the dumbbells level throughout the movement to ensure they properly engage the pectoralis major. Additionally, when performing the dumbbell bench press, if you let your shoulders rise, you will end up disengaging the pectoralis major and working other muscles instead. When performing exercises, it is crucial to avoid letting the shoulders come forward, as this can lead to the triceps and muscles around the trapezius and pectoralis major pushing the weight out. The goal is to keep the shoulders back and not let them protrude. You can continue to apply load while using a ball. Please ensure that the shoulders do not come forward. Now, regarding the back, whether it's a pull-up or a lat pull-down, a common mistake is, when performing exercises, if you start to hunch your back. Even though the back muscles are engaged, it appears as if the back is elongated. The back is stretched, but it is not contracting. Back contraction occurs when you open your chest, and the back forms a certain shape, preventing you from hunching over. Instead, you should push your chest out and arch your back to achieve proper back contraction, which means you won't hunch over. This is what it means to hunch your back. Actually, if the elbows move forward, you're already using the pectoralis major. There is a significant feeling of pulling with the pectoralis major. So to avoid using it, you should open your chest and contract your back. By doing this, the pectoralis major will not engage at all. So it's better to maintain this feeling to avoid a hunched back. Additionally, a common mistake in pull-ups is to pull away from this position as you rise. When you pull away, you are indeed lifting. But if you are pulling away from the bar, the latissimus dorsi doesn't contract as much as you might think. If you approach the bar, moving your body closer to it, the latissimus dorsi contracts fully. However, if you are pulling away, the teres major contracts, but the latissimus dorsi doesn't contract as much. Therefore, if you want to build your back muscles effectively, you need to bring your chest closer to the bar or pull the bar towards yourself. Otherwise, the latissimus dorsi won't engage properly. Make sure not to keep your distance while lifting. When performing the one-arm row with a dumbbell, it's quite common to only lift the dumbbell. While the dumbbell is indeed being lifted, this often leads to a hunched back position, and the back muscles are not actually contracting because the movement is being driven by the arms. To avoid this, make sure to arch your back slightly and look forward while pulling from the shoulder joint. It's fine if the latissimus dorsi stretches and contracts by pulling at the base of the arm being lowered, so the distance the dumbbell moves isn't that important. The dumbbell distance is just the height the dumbbell is raised. Even if it's only half of that, what matters is the feeling of the latissimus dorsi contracting as the base of the arm rises. And if you feel it tightening and stretching, then it doesn't matter if the distance the dumbbell moves up and down is only half. Please be aware of whether the range of motion for your back is expanding or contracting as you perform the exercise. Regarding the shoulders, a common mistake with the dumbbell shoulder press is pushing the weights forward. When you push forward, it feels like you are extending your arms ahead of you, which primarily engages the pectoralis major. Therefore, as you adjust the angle, the more you push forward, the closer you get to effectively targeting the pectoralis major. It's like you're coming in. It feels like you're lifting the dumbbell press with the pectoralis major in England. If the triceps don't contract much, or when you do this, the dumbbell arm goes up, but the body is escaping. The body is escaping. This has already turned into an incline dumbbell press for the pectoralis major. Therefore, I want you to keep the body as still as possible and lift almost vertically so that the arms don't move forward relative to the body. By doing it this way, you will effectively target the deltoids. There is a sandbag attached. And one more thing with the shoulder press. When you lift, it may feel diagonal, but the same applies when lowering. You should raise it straight up, B. When lowering, if your elbows flare out and create a diagonal position, it clearly indicates where the strain is. It's here, where the tension is felt. This means that because you are leaning here, this side is feeling easier. By keeping it vertical, the load will be placed heavily on the shoulders. Therefore, when lowering, you should not open your elbows. Instead, try to keep your elbows slightly closed while maintaining a vertical position. It might feel different than you expect. Are your elbows opening more than you thought? So close the tips of your elbows a bit and keep them vertical. Additionally, for the shoulder raise, you will be using your shoulders. One thing you should avoid is only using the dumbbell. If you only lift the dumbbell, it won't effectively contract the deltoids. Instead, you should lift it higher than your elbows, or at least to the same height as your elbows, to achieve proper contraction of the deltoids. For example, if your elbows are raised but the dumbbell is not, this is a common mistake. If you raise your elbows to about shoulder height, the dumbbell should be at a similar height. It is sufficient to raise your elbows to about shoulder level, so it's better if they don't go above that. Furthermore, when performing side raises, the elbows should be raised almost to horizontal, but if you bend your elbows too much, like this, it can affect your form. When this happens, the distance between your shoulders and the dumbbells changes, which significantly alters the sensation of the weight. The farther away the triangle is, the tighter it becomes. However, when it is at half the distance, it becomes much easier. So, even if you are doing a side raise with your elbows bent significantly and using a very heavy weight, it feels similar to using half the weight. If you are going to lift heavy like that, it's better to use a slightly lighter weight and not bend too much. Just keep the arms extended with a slight bend at the end. The width and angle of the bend are the most important. It really targets the deltoids. And since you can use a significant negative when lowering, in this current state of bending a lot, the third data point doesn't feel like much of a negative. It doesn't feel like much at all. Therefore, the elbow line is a no-go. As for the side raise, the dumbbell is... When the dumbbell is raised vertically from your perspective or from above, the triceps do not contract much in this vertical position. However, if you approach the movement by lifting the dumbbell in a way that brings it closer to a horizontal position, though it won't be completely sideways, by gripping it as if pulling it back and lifting it, the dumbbell will transition from this position to that position. As you twist, the triangular tube tightens up nicely. This is the contraction we want. If you can't create this contraction, even if you do the raise again, you can still form that bulging shape in the middle. When using the dumbbell, instead of holding it vertically, try to position it horizontally. From above, it should look more like this rather than that. When performing the exercise, it feels almost horizontal, but it effectively targets the triceps. With the dumbbell arm curl, a common mistake is that the elbow moves back and forth, causing the elbow joint to rise and fall. But this does not engage the triceps at all. Instead, it puts strain on the front of the shoulder. Therefore, the elbow should primarily move back and forth, while trying to keep it as stable as possible. The focus is on the contraction and extension of the biceps and properly transmitting the load at 2 o'clock. Additionally, a common issue with arm curls is the bending and straightening of the wrist, which is clearly not ideal. However, what happens is that when lowering the weight, the wrist bends, and when lifting, it curls again. This is essentially a wrist movement. Therefore, while it may seem like the dumbbell is being lifted effectively, in reality, there is a significant disconnect between the upper and lower parts of the movement. Before performing the bicep curl, it is important to keep your posture straight and stable. You should not sway in either direction. Instead, maintain a fixed position while only bending your elbows. It should feel like the rest of your body is not moving at all, and the movement should be concentrated solely in your arms. Often, people do this unconsciously, so it's advisable to record yourself and check your form. Additionally, remember to incorporate hip movement during the arm curl. This is no longer just about the biceps, it's about the movement of the waist. So focus on your core and lower back. Keep your pelvis and legs fixed as much as possible. While standing, make sure to do it in a fixed position. The arm curl with the waist engaged obviously won't work at 2 o'clock. As for the triceps, there are various types. So if I go into too much detail, we won't finish the 20 reps. I'll just cover one type. In the case of 3 o'clock, it's about an ambiguous bend and stretch, meaning it seems like it's bending, but it's not really bending, and it seems like it's stretching, but it's not really stretching. It feels like this. To bend means to bend it to this point, and to stretch means to extend until the elbow is in a straight line, like this. This is the shape when it's fully squeezed at 3 o'clock. If you stop before reaching that point, and if you don't fully extend this side, the muscles won't fully stretch. If you can't fully squeeze or fully stretch, that's the idea. Furthermore, the elbow tends to move, and when that happens, it is important to properly contract and extend the triceps, rather than just relying on their stretching and contracting. The same principle applies to kick work, where there isn't much stretching and contracting. It's crucial to fully contract and then extend, ensuring that the elbows are straight. When the arms reach 108 degrees, it is fundamentally important for triceps training. And, well, finally, just a little. When thinking about the muscles as a whole rather than individually, there can be a tendency to rush. For example, during the shoulder press, if you do it too quickly, like counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, it becomes too fast. It's so fast that you can't even tell where you're at, and the load isn't effective. By performing the exercise more carefully and slowly, the load will consistently be applied in a triangular manner. Additionally, for back exercises, while there are many barbell variations, the focus is often on the latissimus dorsi. When using a barbell, it feels like a sequence of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's that kind of feeling. At that point, the innate ability is there, and to lift this barbell or dumbbell, you also use your legs, creating a clanking sound. You shouldn't let your back become like chicken meat. You should also carefully close it and apply load while stretching and contracting. Overall, or rather in terms of mindset, there is a tendency to be overly fixated on the bench press. I have quite a few preferences. Well, when I went to the gym, the bench press was occupied. I thought, oh, it's not available. Getting frustrated or irritated or waiting around is all a waste of time. So if the bench press isn't available, I can still work on my awesome pectoralis major with dumbbell presses. On that day, I could just postpone the bench press, so I think it's fine to do dumbbell presses instead. I don't insist on doing the bench press. It's the same with other exercises. If something isn't available at that moment, it's important to switch to something else. Also, there are times when the order of exercises is reversed. When I observe people at the gym, I see some who do triceps after working on their chest, or some who do shoulders after triceps. This order is reversed. Generally, for upper body workouts, the chest and back should be the first priority. If someone is doing a full workout that day, shoulders should come second, and biceps and triceps should be third in that order. If you are doing the entire routine, the order remains the same. It feels like we will proceed in that order, ensuring it doesn't become reversed. And finally, this will serve as a summary of the whole discussion. It's about using weights that are too heavy, Yes, most of what I just mentioned is caused by using weights that are too heavy, which leads to various issues. Because many things are too heavy, these problems arise. If the weights are appropriate, those issues won't occur. When the weights are too heavy, it inevitably leads to those problems. It's important to use the right weight. There isn't much more to say. Well, I've introduced 20 points, but do any of them resonate with you or hit home? Among them, there might be some that you haven't noticed yourself. It's important to record your workouts on video and check your form. This kind of review is necessary, so please take the time to reassess those aspects. As for the upper body, I haven't included abdominal exercises this time. If I were to include them, it would probably add up to about 25 reps, so I'd like to wrap it up here for today. Let's keep pushing forward. Please support the channel. I'm also doing installations, so follow along. This was Pasta Trainer.